25 old home habits that helped houses stay cool before air conditioning took over. Before air conditioning became normal, summer did not simply arrive outside the house. It moved into the rooms. It settled in the upstairs hallway. It sat on the kitchen walls after supper. It made bed sheets feel warm before anyone even climbed in. If you have ever lived in an older house that heats up by afternoon, you already understand why people once treated summer like something the whole home had to manage, not with one button on the wall, with habits. In 1956, in a white frame house outside Springfield, Missouri, a father stepped onto the porch before breakfast, looked at the direction of the sun, and started closing the curtains on the east side before the heat had a chance to get inside. His wife had already opened the upper windows on the shaded side. The children knew which doors stayed closed until evening. The attic fan was not run like magic. The house was handled like a living thing. That was the old difference. People did not wait until a room became unbearable and then blame the weather. They understood that a house could be kept cooler by inches, hour by hour, before the heat took hold. Today, many of those habits sound almost too simple. Close the right curtains, open the right window, keep the kitchen heat down, let the porch do its job. Sleep lower in the house when July gets heavy. None of it feels dramatic. But before central air took over American life, those little choices could decide whether a house felt like a refuge or an oven. Number 19 explains why old families treated curtains like a summer tool, not decoration. Number 12 shows the kitchen habit that kept supper from turning the whole house hot. And number 1 may be the clearest old lesson about comfort. A cool home was not bought once. It was tended every day. So here are 25 old home habits that helped houses stay cool before air conditioning took over. Number 25, opening the house before the sun got high. Old homeowners did not wait until noon to think about heat. They started early. On summer mornings, before the roof began holding heat, windows were opened to let the cooler air pass through. In many homes, that meant opening windows on opposite sides and leaving interior doors open just long enough for air to move. People knew which side caught the first breeze, which bedroom stayed coolest, and whether the back door pulled air through the kitchen better than the parlor window. The house had a pattern, and the family learned it by living there. The old habit worked because it used the cool part of the day before it disappeared. Once the sun heated the walls and roof, the house became harder to rescue. What disappeared was not the breeze. What disappeared was the habit of noticing it. Modern comfort trains people to ignore the weather until the thermostat answers it. Older families paid attention earlier. They did not own a button that could erase the afternoon, so they made the morning count. Number 24, closing the house before the heat moved in. The second part of the old summer routine was the one many people forget. After the house had taken in the cool morning air, it had to be protected. By late morning, old homeowners began closing windows on the sunny side, pulling curtains, lowering shades, and shutting certain doors. To a child, it could feel fussy. Why close a window on a pretty day? Sunlight was not just light. It was heat entering the house and staying there. In a 1950s home without central air, every sunny window mattered. Closing the house early was about keeping the inside from becoming a storage room for heat. This habit required timing. Too early, and the house missed the morning air. Too late, and the heat was already in the curtains, floors, furniture, and walls. That kind of judgment came from repetition. Families learned the house the way a gardener learns soil, not by reading a screen, but by remembering what happened yesterday.
Number 23. Using cross breezes like a household tool. Before air conditioning, a breeze was not treated as a lucky accident. It was directed. Old houses often had windows arranged so air could move from one side to the other. But the family still had to help it along. One window opened wide might do less than two windows opened halfway in the right places. A bedroom door cracked open could change how air moved down a hall. A transom, screen door, or upstairs window could help warm air escape while cooler air entered below. This is why older people sometimes seem particular about windows. They were not simply opening everything. They were making a path. A father might walk through the house in the evening and adjust 3 windows without saying much. A grandmother might tell a child not to slam the door because it broke the draw of air through the back room. Those small rules were part of the household knowledge. The old logic was simple: moving air feels cooler than trapped air. Modern homes often lost this habit because comfort became centralized. One machine handled every room the same way. But older homes were not the same in every room. They had corners, shadows, drafts, hot pockets, and sweet spots. The family had to know them. Number 22. Keeping sunny doors closed during the worst hours. In many old houses, one door could change the whole afternoon. A back door that opened into full sun. A screen door off the kitchen. A mudroom door that children used all day. Every time it swung open, hot air came in and cool shade leaked out. Parents noticed. That is why summer houses had rules. Use the shaded door. Do not stand with the door open. Come in and close it behind you. Keep the porch door latched. Leave the hot side of the house alone until later. To a modern ear, those rules sound strict. But before mechanical cooling, a door was not just an entrance. It was a gate in the house's heat management. Old families understood that comfort could be lost in little carelessnesses. A door left open during July was not a small thing when the kitchen had no air conditioning and supper still had to be cooked. The habit protected cooler rooms from hotter ones. It also taught children that a home was shared. There was an old courtesy hidden inside the rule. Close the door because the house belongs to all of us. Number 21. Letting shade do the first work. Older homes often depended on shade before they depended on anything else. Awnings over windows. Deep porches. Trees on the west side. Vines on a trellis. Canvas shades. Even a simple overhang could make a difference because it stopped sunlight before it hit the glass. That last part matters. Once sunlight passed through a window, the heat was already indoors. Curtains helped, but outside shade was stronger because it kept the sun from entering in the first place. In many neighborhoods, you could see this old thinking built into the house. Porches faced the street not only for visiting, but for shade. Deciduous trees gave summer cover and dropped leaves in winter when sunlight was welcome. A canvas awning might be lowered every morning like part of the weather itself. The old habit was not fancy. It was practical architecture made domestic. A man might patch an awning rather than buy something new because he knew that strip of canvas protected the whole front room. A woman might keep a shade rolled down all afternoon because she knew what the west sun did to the parlor. Today we often think of shade as landscaping or style. Older families thought of it as comfort. Number 20. Using light-colored curtains in summer. In some old houses, curtains changed with the season. Heavy winter coverings came down, lighter summer curtains went up, and the rooms took on a different rhythm. White cotton, pale muslin, or light patterned fabric could soften sunlight without making the room feel sealed shut. This was not just about beauty. Dark fabric absorbs more heat. Heavy fabric can trap warmth in a room when it is not needed. Light curtains helped reduce glare while keeping the space from feeling closed and heavy. A 1950s housewife might not have explained it in scientific language, but she knew from experience which curtains made a room hotter. That kind of knowledge lived in hands. It lived in washing, hanging, mending, folding, and changing the house as seasons changed. Today, many homes keep the same window treatments all year because windows have become part of decor more than daily management. But older families used fabric the way a sailor uses canvas, to catch, block, soften, and guide the air and light. The curtain was not only pretty. It was part of the summer equipment. Number 19. Pulling shades before a room became hot. This habit may be one of the simplest and most forgotten. Old homeowners pulled shades before the room heated up, not after. That timing made all the difference. If the afternoon sun was already pouring through the glass and the floorboards felt warm, the room had begun storing heat. Pulling the shade then helped a little, but the best chance had passed. The older habit was to block the sun while the room was still comfortable. You could see it in houses where the west-facing shades were down by noon. It was not gloomy. It was prevention. Many families had a mental map of the sun. East windows in the morning. South windows through the day. West windows in the late afternoon. Each side of the house had its trouble hour. The habit worked because a cool room is easier to keep cool than a hot room is to cool down. Prevent the heat from entering. Do not challenge it after it has won. Modern systems made people less patient with prevention because the machine feels like rescue. But the old house asked for a different relationship. Help me early, and I will help you later. Stop the count for a moment, and look at what these first 7 habits have in common. Not one of them was a gadget. They were all decisions made before the house became uncomfortable. Open early. Close in time. Guide the breeze. Guard the doors. Make shade work. Choose the right fabric. Pull the shade before the room is hot. That was the old summer skill. Anticipation. Older families did not always have more money or easier lives, but they had a sharper sense of cause and effect inside the home. The next habits moved deeper into the house, into floors, porches, kitchens, beds, and attics, where people used the building itself to survive the long, still afternoons. Number 18. Moving daily life to the cooler side of the house. Before every room could be made the same temperature, families migrated in summer. Breakfast might happen in the kitchen before it grew hot. Afternoon sewing might move to the north room. Children might be told to play on the shaded porch instead of in the upstairs bedroom. A father might read the evening paper near the window that caught the best breeze. This sounds strange today because modern comfort tries to make every room equally usable. But older homes had personalities. One room held heat. Another stayed cool because of trees. Families learned where the house gave relief. The habit saved comfort because it stopped people from fighting the hardest rooms at the hardest hours. Instead of demanding that the whole house obey, they followed the cooler path already available. The old family knew where the house gave relief. Number 17. Keeping upstairs rooms closed during the afternoon. Heat rises, and old homeowners did not need a chart to know it. They felt it at the top of the stairs. In July, the upstairs of an older house could become a storage place for heat. Roof heat pressed down. Still air collected. Bedrooms grew heavy long before bedtime. One old habit was to keep upstairs rooms closed during the worst part of the day, especially if those rooms caught sun. Doors were shut, shades pulled, and unnecessary traffic was kept out. Then in the evening, when the outside air cooled, windows were opened and the rooms were aired out for sleep. The purpose was not to make upstairs cold. It was to keep it from becoming worse than it had to be. Every open door allowed heat to move around the house. Every sunny window added to the burden. By separating the hottest rooms from the rest of the home, families slowed the spread. Rooms were not all treated as one big open space. Doors mattered. Stairways mattered. The house could be divided, shaded, aired, and rested. Modern open layouts often look beautiful, but older families understood the value of a door that could close. Number 16. Sleeping downstairs on the hottest nights. Some summer nights were too hot for pride. On those nights, old families moved. Children slept on screened porches. Parents made a bed in the front room. Someone dragged a mattress downstairs. Nobody pretended the upstairs bedroom was comfortable just because that was where beds belong. This was a habit of practical surrender. Downstairs was usually cooler than upstairs. Porches caught air that bedrooms missed. A room with 2 open windows might be better than a stuffy bedroom under the roof. The habit worked because it treated comfort as flexible. The family adjusted to the weather instead of demanding that the house perform the same every night. Today, moving a bed for heat can feel like defeat. Back then, it was common sense. The old lesson was simple: use the coolest part of the house for the hottest part of the day or night. Number 15. Using porches as real summer rooms. The old porch was not decoration. It was a climate tool. Before air conditioning moved everyone indoors, porches were living rooms, waiting rooms, cooling rooms, visiting rooms, and evening dining rooms. A screened porch could let air move while keeping out insects. A front porch gave shade to the wall behind it. A back porch allowed messy, hot, or wet tasks to stay out of the kitchen. In many homes, summer did not end at the doorway. It stretched onto the porch. People snapped beans there. They shelled peas there. They read newspapers there. They drank iced tea there. They watched children in the yard there. The porch carried some of the household's heat and activity, so the interior did not have to carry all of it. This habit disappeared when houses turned inward. Television, central air, attached garages, and privacy fences changed how people used the front of the home. The porch became something to decorate for holidays instead of something that cooled daily life. An old porch shaded walls, caught breezes, and gave the family a place to be when the house needed rest. Number 14. Cooking early when the day was still forgiving. In a house without air conditioning, the stove was a summer enemy if handled carelessly. Older families knew this. Heavy cooking was often done early, before the kitchen became hot. Baking might happen in the morning. Supper might be planned around leftovers, cold plates, garden vegetables, or simple foods that did not require heating the kitchen for an hour. This was not laziness. It was household strategy. A hot stove could warm more than the kitchen. Heat traveled into the dining room, up the stairs, into the walls, and into the evening. Once the kitchen overheated, the whole house felt it. A grandmother might say, "I'm not turning that oven on in this heat," and everyone understood. The habit worked because it respected the cost of indoor heat. Not money cost, exactly, but comfort cost. Every pot, every oven, every kettle added something the house had to absorb. Heat made indoors has to go somewhere. Number 13. Eating lighter during hot weather. Old summer meals often followed the heat. Cold ham, sliced tomatoes, cucumbers, bread, cottage cheese, deviled eggs, beans cooked earlier, corn from the garden, lemonade, iced tea, a pie baked in the morning, leftovers served without apology. These foods were not only about taste. They were about keeping the house livable. A heavy meal that required long cooking could punish the kitchen. A lighter meal could feed the family without turning supper into a furnace. Families understood that comfort was not only controlled by windows and curtains. It was also controlled by what people chose to do inside the house. Cooking, washing, ironing, baking, and bathing all changed the air. Today we often think of cooling as a mechanical problem. but an older family saw cooling as a daily rhythm. What you cooked, when you cooked, where you sat, which door you used, and which shade you pulled all belonged to the same system. Number 12. Keeping laundry heat outside when possible. Summer laundry could make a house miserable. Boiling water, hot irons, damp fabric, and indoor drying all added heat and humidity. Before automatic dryers became common, many families used the clothesline not only because it saved money, but because it kept heat outside. A line of sheets in the yard was not just a picture of old America. It was practical climate control. Wet fabric drying indoors releases moisture into the air. In hot weather, that can make a room feel heavier. Drying outside let the sun and wind do the work without burdening the house. Ironing, when it had to be done, was often pushed to cooler hours. Older women especially understood this because they felt the work directly. They knew what a hot iron did to a kitchen in July and how damp laundry changed the air. The clothesline carried heat, dampness, and labor out of the house. It gave the home a chance to breathe. Number 11. Keeping lamps and small heat sources in mind. Before modern lighting became cooler and more efficient, lamps could add noticeable warmth to a room. Older families paid attention to that. They used daylight carefully in the morning, shaded harsh sun in the afternoon, and kept unnecessary lamps off when heat was already high. Even the radio, the iron, the stove, and small appliances were treated with practical awareness. Every little heat source mattered more in a closed summer house. A person who grew up before central air learned to think in accumulation. One lamp is not much. One stove burner is not everything. But together, small heat decisions decide how a room feels. That is the old mindset. Heat was not one big event. It was a pile of small additions. Modern comfort can hide that lesson because machines compensate for waste. But the old home made cause and effect visible. Older people were not being fussy. They were listening to the answer. Stop again and notice the pattern. These habits are not about suffering through summer. They are about cooperating with the house. Move to the cool room. Shut off the hot one. Sleep where the air is better. Use the porch. Cook early. Eat for the season. Dry laundry outside. Remember that every little source of heat adds up. There is a quiet dignity in that. The old family was not powerless just because it lacked modern equipment. It had timing, memory, and routines passed from one person to another. Number 10. Letting the attic breathe. In many older homes, the attic was the hottest part of the house. It sat under the roof all day collecting heat. If that heat had nowhere to go, it pressed downward into the living space and made upstairs rooms worse. Old homeowners paid attention to attic ventilation. They knew whether vents were clear, whether louvers were blocked, whether hot air could escape, and whether the attic seemed to trap heat long after sunset. This does not mean every family understood building science in a modern way. But they understood symptoms. If the upstairs stayed hot all night, someone looked upward. If the attic smelled stale and baked, someone noticed. If a vent was blocked by storage boxes, it mattered. Many old homes had gable vents, roof vents, attic windows, or whole house fans installed by professionals. The family's job was not to improvise dangerously. It was to keep air paths respected and not turn the attic into a sealed, cluttered oven. The old lesson remains valuable. A house must be allowed to exhale. When heat rises and has nowhere to go, everyone below feels it. Number 9. Opening high windows in the evening. Evening was the second chance of the summer day. When outdoor air cooled, older families opened the house again. High windows, upstairs windows, transoms, and attic openings helped warm air escape while cooler air entered lower down. This habit depended on patience. During the afternoon, the house might stay closed against heat. But when the sun dropped and the outside air finally softened, the routine changed. Windows opened. Doors with screens were latched. The house was allowed to unload what it had been holding. The habit worked because warm air naturally rises. Giving it a high exit helped the house cool more evenly. It also kept the home from carrying yesterday's heat into tomorrow. Today, many homes stay sealed almost all the time. Sometimes that makes sense. But the old habit teaches something broader: timing matters. A window can help or hurt depending on the hour. The same opening that invites heat at noon may bring relief at 9 o'clock. Old families knew the difference. Number 8. Keeping screens repaired and ready. Screens were summer infrastructure, not decoration. A torn screen meant insects came in, windows stayed closed, and the house stayed hotter. That is why old families patched screens, tightened frames, and stored screen doors carefully. A father might fix a small tear on a Saturday because he knew what would happen if he ignored it. A mother might remind the children not to push on the screen because that one window caught the best evening air. The screen made ventilation usable. Without it, the family had to choose between bugs and heat. With it, they could let the house breathe through the evening and night. This habit looks small until it fails. A screen is not impressive, but it protects the simplest cooling system a house has: moving air. Modern life often forgets maintenance that does not announce itself. Screens fall into that category. They are noticed only when they are torn. Older homeowners noticed them before that, because a summer window was only as useful as the screen that made it livable. Number 7. Using fans to move air through the house, not just at a face. Electric fans existed before central air became common, but older families often used them with more strategy than people realize. A fan was not always pointed straight at the nearest person. Sometimes it was placed near a window to pull cooler evening air in. Sometimes it pushed warm air out. Sometimes it sat in a hallway to help one room share air with another. This distinction matters. A fan in a sealed hot room can stir heat around. A fan placed with windows and doors in mind can help exchange air. They respected the limits of the tool. A fan did not make air cold. It made air move, break up stale pockets, and help the house breathe when the outside temperature allowed it. The habit faded when air conditioning trained people to expect cold air from a machine. But the older fan had a hum, a placement, and a purpose. It was part of the evening routine. Number 6. Sitting on the porch until the house cooled down. Sometimes the smartest way to cool a house was to stay out of its way. After a hot afternoon, the inside needed time. Walls, floors, furniture, and upstairs rooms had absorbed heat. More activity only made the house work harder. So people sat outside. On the porch. On the steps. In a lawn chair under a tree. Beside a screen door with a glass of iced tea. Children played until dusk while adults waited for the house to breathe out the day. The porch gave the house a break and gave people one too. Neighbors talked. Parents watched the street. The days slowed down before bedtime. Number 6 matters because it shows old patience. The family did not always demand immediate comfort. Sometimes it waited with the house. Number 5. Planting shade where the afternoon sun hit hardest. Old homeowners thought long-term about summer. They planted trees. Not always with formal landscaping plans, but with practical memory. The west side of a house could be brutal in late afternoon. A tree placed there could shade windows and walls when the sun was lowest and hardest to block. Vines on a trellis, shrubs near exposed walls, and tall plantings around porches could all soften heat before it touched the house. This habit required patience because shade is not instant. A young tree does not cool a room the first summer. But older families were willing to make improvements that paid off slowly. Deciduous trees could block summer sun and allow winter sun after leaves fell. That is not a trick. It is ordinary wisdom. Today, many houses sit exposed because fast construction and quick landscaping value appearance first. Old shade had a job. It stood between the family and the heat every July afternoon. Number 4. keeping clutter away from air paths. A house cannot breathe through a blocked path. Older homeowners knew this in practical ways. They kept furniture from smothering windows and screened doors. They avoided stacking boxes in front of attic openings or basement windows. They kept hallways clear enough for air to move. This habit was not about neatness for its own sake. It was about flow. Air needs openings. Curtains need room to move. Doors need to swing. Windows need to be reachable. A screen that cannot be opened because a table is in the way may as well not exist. In an old home without central air, clutter could become heat because it stopped the actions that cooled the house. They may not have called it airflow. They just knew the house needed a clear path. Make room for the house to do what it was built to do. Before the final three, pause for one last thought. The strongest old cooling habits were not dramatic. They were almost invisible because they were repeated every day. That is why they vanished so easily. Once air conditioning became common, people did not need to remember which window caught the night breeze, which curtain blocked the west sun, or which tree protected the kitchen wall. The machine took over the burden, and memory slowly left the house. But memory is exactly what made old homes feel cared for. The last three habits are not just about temperature. They are about the relationship people had with the house before comfort became automatic. Number 3. Treating the basement as a summer refuge. In many old American homes, the basement was the coolest place in the house. Not polished. Not pretty. Sometimes damp and dim. But cool. Families used that. On the hottest days, chores might move downstairs. Food storage might rely on the cooler air. Children might be sent to play where the floor felt cold. A man might work at a basement bench in the afternoon because the garage was too hot. The basement was part of the summer map. This habit worked because Earth helps moderate temperature. Below-grade spaces often stayed cooler than rooms under the roof. Old families did not need to explain it. They felt it under their feet. Not every basement was suitable for every use. Some were too damp, musty, or unsafe. The point is that families understood the temperature differences within their own homes and used them wisely. Today, basements are often finished, conditioned, or ignored as storage. But in older houses, the basement was sometimes the place where July loosened its grip. Number 2. Cleaning and maintaining what helped the house cool. Old summer comfort depended on small maintenance. Screens patched. Hinges oiled. Windows unstuck. Shades repaired. Porch doors latched. Vents kept clear. Fans dusted. Brush trimmed away from openings. None of these jobs made an exciting story by itself. Together, they made the house work. A stuck window could ruin a cross breeze. A torn screen could keep a bedroom closed. A broken shade could turn a room hot every afternoon. A dirty fan could move less air. That is one reason these habits belonged so naturally to fathers, mothers, grandparents, and old neighbors. They were always noticing small failures before they became daily misery. They did not separate repair from comfort. Modern life often waits for breakdown. Older home life rewarded upkeep. Number 2 is really the backbone of the whole list. If the parts of the house that handle summer are neglected, the house cannot help you when the heat arrives. Number 1. Knowing the house by heart. The greatest old cooling habit was not a curtain, a porch, a fan, a tree, or a screen. It was familiarity. Older families knew their homes by heart. They knew which room caught the first sun. They knew which window pulled the evening breeze. They knew which door the children should use in July. They knew when to cook, when to close the shades, when to open upstairs, and when to move downstairs. That knowledge did not arrive all at once. It came from paying attention year after year. Every summer taught the family something. Every mistake was remembered. Leave the west shade up once, and you learned. Bake late in the afternoon once, and you learned. This was homecraft in the deepest sense. Not a list of tricks, but a relationship with the place. Air conditioning gave Americans a remarkable kind of comfort, and in many climates it became more than luxury. It became health and daily relief. But something quiet was lost when homes no longer had to be read so carefully. People stopped learning the house. They stopped noticing the sun's schedule, the porch's gift, the attic's burden, the tree's service, and the window that made the whole evening better. Think back to that 1956 house outside Springfield. The father closing the east curtains after breakfast. The mother opening the shaded windows. The children learning which door not to leave open. The porch waiting for evening. The basement holding its cool silence. The upstairs windows rising after sunset. No one in that house thought they were practicing old wisdom. They were just trying to get through July. But the habits added up to something larger. They taught patience. They taught observation. They taught that comfort was a family responsibility, not only a machine's job. They taught that a house gives better service when someone understands it. That is the part worth remembering. Not because anyone should give up modern comfort, but because the old habits still tell the truth about homes. Heat has a path. Shade has value. Air needs room. Timing matters. And a house that is known by heart is almost always a house that is cared for better. If this reminded you of a porch, a screen door, a bedroom that was too hot to sleep in, a grandmother who knew when to close the curtains, or a father who understood every window in the house, tell us what summer habit your family used before air conditioning took over. Because sometimes the coolest room in an old house was not cooled by a machine. It was cooled by memory, timing, and the quiet skill of people who knew how to live with the home they had.